Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second Next Practice webinar. I am absolutely delighted to be with you again this evening. Tonight we're going to talk about some Next Practice examples around things like building learning communities using Google Apps, and in particular Google Plus communities. Also look around organizing to make your life a better place using things like Calendar, Google Mail, and also Google Sites. And then finally, we'll be looking at how we can build inquiry or how we can use Google Apps for Education and other technologies to support our learners in inquiry. So we've got a very, very packed agenda. I will very quickly pass over to my co-presenters tonight, and we'll just start with Kimberley. She can say hello.
Hello, I'm Kimberley, and I was here a couple of weeks ago, but I work for the Catholic Education Melbourne, and with our EdTech team, and yeah, that's really it about me. I'm a GCT and a GET, and a little bit of a nerd, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of my nerdiness tonight.
Awesome, thank you so much, Kimberley. And now we're going to pass over to Chris.
Hello, everybody. My name's Chris Mann. I work at the John Monash Science School as an environmental science, geography, and English teacher, and have really got on board with the Google Apps in the past year and a half as I've been working here, and just happy to share what I use Google Apps for in my classroom.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. So just to, in the way that we should always start great learning, which we hope this is going to be tonight, just going to quickly screen share with you. So we just click over to that. And yeah, this is our presentation for tonight. This link will go into the feed on the events page. Sorry, I should have said this as well. If you are at the event, please make sure that you sign in by saying that you're attending this event. That would be awesome. And if you haven't registered for the event, there is a link to the registration form. That just helps us to keep in contact with you so that we can give you some more opportunities around professional learning. So, look here. Here we go. The learning outcomes for today are very, very simple. We want you to learn lots of stuff. We want you to develop some knowledge. We want you to work in a certain mindset, develop some and use some specific skills, and also some specific tools as well. So by the end of this session, you'll have seen examples of using Google Plus as a community for learning. You'll have seen how Gmail and Calendar can help organize your life, and you'll see a model of inquiry with technology. The mindset we would love you to have, or to kind of work in this evening, is a growth mindset. So ensuring that you might see an idea here and think, oh, I'm not sure that would work with my kids. A growth mindset would be, I've never done this, but I'm going to give it a go and see how I'm sure we can improve learning using some of these tools and ideas that are being shared. But also be analytical. So really look at what we're talking about. I think we said this in the last webinar. The things we're going to share with you are amazing, and you will, have a fantastic. As far as we're concerned, they're fantastic. But you need to analyze them, look at them, and decide whether they're going to work for you in your own context. And also, the mindset we want is you to be collaborative. We're very lucky. I'm going to say I'm very lucky to work with such wonderful people as Chris and Kimberley, and to be able to collaborate and learn from them all the time. Part of these webinars is building up that collaboration and a learning community. So please continue the conversations in the event page, but also on the Q&A app. So make sure you click on that app. It's in the top right-hand corner of your stream, and ask us some questions, and we will get to answer them as quickly as we can. The skills we're going to use, as we said, collaboration, research, inquiry, and organization. And the tool set you're going to develop tonight are Google Plus communities, Gmail, Calendar, Google Docs, Padlet, Ngram Viewer, Google Newspapers, and even a couple more. So without further ado, I shall pass over to Chris. And find him. Sharing. Stop sharing. Pass over to Chris, and he's going to start to talk a little bit about learning communities. Thanks, Chris.
No worries. Okay, guys. So Google Plus Communities, I use not only to engage my students, but I also use it to help organize classes in terms of resources and classroom tasks, and also facilitate a really nice area for students to discuss concepts, ideas, and issues that we actually go through during class. Looking at our wonderful slides, if I do some screen sharing, and I want to do the entire screen, thank you. Okay. written there that it's a really great platform for creating rich learning communities because the students get to interact on that online environment. I mentioned this in our previous webinar, that the really important thing is to actually be able to give students the opportunity to develop an online literacy and do that in a really safe environment. Google Plus also allows you to create engaging learning tasks. Okay, anything online kids are quite happy to engage with. And this also allows students to share their learning with each other. It really builds on that collaboration. If you want to do group tasks or simply create a shared resource, Google Plus will let you do that quite easily. Additional to that, learning is really visible. If they're doing posts, sharing their learning, sharing their tasks that they're completing in class or for homework, it's really visible on these on Google Plus communities, and therefore that learning is trackable. You can actually see the improvement that they make over time, and that allows you to intervene at that point of need. So if you notice that maybe a main concept that you've tried to deliver, say looking at how the Earth is warming due to global warming, you can actually assess whether or not they're able to explain that concept through some posts and things like that. So I'm just going to walk you through how to set up a community, and then also move on to the different aspects that you can use a community for. By no means are, once again, the things that I present to you exhaustive, but I think they're pretty fantastic, and my kids certainly get excited when I say we're going to do something on Google+. So I'm going to jump over to Google+ right now. Okay. So on your Gmail account or whatever Google account that you are using, you'll see up the top right-hand side there should be a name here. That should have a plus sign next to it, and that'll send you into the Google Plus area for you to create a profile or at least go to your profile page. Then you'll have your bar over here, which has all your different options, and you want to go down to communities. Okay. So as you can see, I've got a couple of communities there. And you can create a community up here. I won't walk you through the entire process to make a community because there's plenty of tutorials out there for you to do that. But once you have created one, you simply come back here to moderate them if you are a moderator. So we're going to go to our next practice webinar, which you can all find if you search for, and feel free to select an invite to join. That's not a problem whatsoever, and we can keep this going. But you can see from here that there's actually, it's a pretty straightforward stream. We've got up here our little text box, which will let us share what's new. So in terms of text, photos, links to different things, videos, events, and we can even run some polls, which is really fantastic, and what we use to decide what we're going to talk about tonight. On your left-hand side, you've got the name, and you can put a tagline. You've got your little cog up the top here that'll let you invite, share the community, edit the community, manage members, and determine how many feed posts are going to show up. Further down, you can search for items in your community, but then you also have a list of different sub-pages that you can create with your Google Plus community. I generally set up some templates such as a news feed where you can just dump anything and everything that you think is important. Videos, so I love to create a video library for the students for the units that we create. Events and photos. Thank you. Events and photos to celebrate the things that we actually do in class, whether we go on field trips. We're working on a wetland environment at the moment at the school, and we're taking a lot of photos chronicling that development. Lesson resources is another thing. Google Plus is actually fantastic for creating quite an engaging library of resources in terms of your lesson templates, documents, PowerPoint presentations, Google Slide presentations, anything that you put in Drive, you can use that URL and put in your lesson resources. Great to have some class expectations in there as well about maybe your entire classroom, what you expect students to take, so that's there in their face all the time, but also some online expectations, okay? And actually get them to co-construct that at the beginning when you set up your community, which is really powerful because it gives them that ownership of the online environment. Course outlines are fantastic to have up there as well, and then you can have discussions, student reflections. Events, of course, is there twice, and same with photos as their sort of defaults. In order to edit those things, just go up to our cog, you can go edit community. Okay, that gives us access to edit the name, the tagline, we can even choose a photo, and these are all our different posts. If I want to add another category, say assessment tasks, I just click on it, enter my new subgenre, click away, and it creates it for me. You can then do a little bit of a spiel about what your community is about. And the great thing about the bottom is that you can add links. So if you use Google Sites, for example, you might want to add a link to your Google site, which may be delivering a slightly more rigorous set of curriculum materials. Okay, so if I swap over to my environmental science Google site, okay, which I've pre-made, I can just copy that link up the top, go back to our thing, our community, paste our URL, and enter our title, environmental science. Okay, obviously I won't put that in there because we've got student work and student names on that site, so we'll just cancel out of that. But it's very simple to simply add a new site. Okay, and that's the editing side of it. All right, I'm going to move on to what we can do with text. Okay, so which is this thing here. Once we click on that, it's going to pop out a little window where we can share what's new. So far, what I've used text for mostly are things like announcements, so letting students know about assessment tasks coming up, room changes, when homework is due, just being able to give them something that they can have Facebook open on their computers at home, but you can also have Google Plus communities open on your computer at home. And at least in real time, they're actually updated and slightly more accessible to them than an email, because still finding, despite how instantaneous emails are, it's still not something that students find engaging. This I've found is much more engaging and also allows them to comment straight away. So we could say homework task 1 due tomorrow. We're going to put that in our news feed, okay, and then we're going to share that. Now, if a student has a question about that homework task, like, what was it, Mr. Mann, can simply put in a question underneath there and post that comment. And you get an email of that if you leave this notifications thing on. If you want to get rid of those notifications, because some students do hit this up pretty frequently, you can turn that off and just check it at your leisure or when you find it appropriate. I also use the text component of Google Plus to do classroom reflections on learning tasks. So student reflections down here are some that I prepared earlier. So just generating a few questions. So complete the following questions in your reflection post, and they just add a comment. One thing that I've learnt about reflection posts is some students don't feel comfortable posting their reflections to the class, which is fair enough, in which case it's safe to say just get them to do that in a document and email that to you, or do it in an exercise book. But those students that do not mind sharing, it's actually a really powerful discussion-based thing to look at their reflections and see where the improvements can be made, not only by sort of where you want to target your teaching, but where you want them to focus their attention. Okay, and same with above. This is more of a skill-based one where they can improve their skills based on an assessment task. Finally, it's also great for congratulating and really celebrating student success. Simply being able to show students that they're doing things the right way, or praising them when they put something that's really interesting on there, because it's not just you that's driving this community. The fantastic thing is that students are actually able to add to it. Okay, we then have photos, which is our next thing. We're just going to go back to all posts to begin with, though. So one thing that I like to use photos for, and I'm just going to show you this, is I'm going to upload a stack of photos that I've prepared. If I go to Drive, as an engager task. Now, I'm just going to select these ones and open. They're going to all upload pretty quickly. Okay, and these are a whole stack of nature shots that I've got just from a Google search and over time. And once they've loaded up, we can add them. And I just find that the photos as an engaging task lets students see a visual of what you're going to be touching on during the lesson, but also something really easy for them to access and talk about straight away because it's in their face. I'm just going to add, see if it'll turn up. There we go. Okay, so we've got a whole stack of different photos. And I might want to create a task, once again going back to some Enviro stuff, just looking at these images, what cross-sphere connections can you make? Okay, I'm going to put that in our lesson resources section. Okay, and just share that. Okay, and that'll actually pop up in your news feed or all posts anyway. Okay, but if you want to direct students to a specific subpage, it's much easier to do that. So once those photos are up there, the students can spend some time looking at the images and trying to answer that question, and they can do so by adding a comment, which is just dynamic. It keeps the conversation moving, and it gives you something to discuss straight away and maybe easier to collate ideas. Another thing that you might want to link to, okay, which is our link section, is an article. Okay, this is looking at how the Amazon is actually inhaling more carbon than it emits. This is a NASA article that was published a few months ago. We can just go back to our Google Plus page and post that link in there, and you can generate a discussion based on that, and it puts in a nice image for you as well, depending on what's on the page. Once again, put that into lesson resources, or you might want to put it in discussions if it's something that you want the kids to prepare earlier to the class, okay, or after the class. And as you can see, you're starting to already get this nice little feed of information. I've got that many things open that things are taking a little bit long to load at the moment, but it really gives kids access to a whole range of different things straight away, and it's quite visual and engaging. Okay. Further down the page, one thing that I prepared earlier was that. Sorry, what was that?
5 minutes, mate. 5 minutes, mate.
Okay, thank you. Is a link to maybe how you might want to start a unit of work. Could take them to a web page. This is a really nice visual of the Earth, and it's live data, and it's at the moment this is showing wind patterns and temperature. Okay, and we just click on the Earth thing down here. But once again, a link that a student can click on at any time and access that information is really fantastic. So obviously the other things that we can add up here are links, videos, events, and polls. A poll that I created earlier, which if we go to lesson resources, okay. Oh, that's a bit of a shame, it's not there. Polls can be used to ask students, here we go, to use for multiple choice question quizzes, okay, putting and getting some answers up there and students choosing the correct answer. Or one thing that we've just done recently in environmental science is we've just watched Netflix Mission Blue, looking at the health of the oceans in the world. And we want to ask students what the main messages of that was, and then we're using the poll system to figure out which one we might choose to follow up in a project. The final thing that you can look at as well is events, where you can create events, and that can be once again homework related, or it can be a field trip related thing, or a reminder. All in all, it just makes the learning a little bit more dynamic. Things can be presented more richly. And I just wanted to briefly show you Google Sites as well. So fingers crossed from this, it's been very quick, but you'll see it's quite straightforward to be able to organize your resources that you want to disseminate out to your students. Google Sites lets you do that a little bit more rigidly. You don't have so much of a feed. And you can create quite dynamic and interactive sites. So this is my environmental science one. On the left-hand side, I have a whole stack of different tabs, such as announcements. Once again, information is sort of duplicated here, hence why I'm sort of using more Google Plus at the moment. But it's really straightforward to be able to create a page with the edit button or the plus button and link it in. You might want to show individual lesson plans is something that we do here at John Monash Science School, and you can put lovely photos and things in, but also gives students the the rundown of what they're going to be doing in their lessons on a day-to-day basis. And that's something that if students are away from school, they have access to. So it does require a little bit of extra work to get that all in there, but you're planning lessons anyway, and this just sort of chronicles that thing for you. The one thing I didn't show beforehand was being able to copy and paste links from Google Drive. All you need to do is go share, get the shareable link, copy that link, and put that into Drive here, into Google Plus Communities. Okay, and put a little spiel in and share. Okay, so that is a whirlwind rundown of Google Plus Communities. Really great for discussions. Students are able to collaborate. You can put a lot of different resources on there, from videos, YouTube clips. They will actually play through the actual community itself or take you to the page. Easy to put links into the bottom if you find a whole stack of different resources. This actually appears on the About statement. Down the bottom, you'll actually put all your links in the About This Community section. So yeah, it's a pretty dynamic place to go to be able to disseminate different lessons and things like that, tasks out to your people. And
thank you so much, Chris.
Not a worry.
So if one pile of questions here, pull them together.
Beautiful.
A couple of aspects of Google Plus and Classroom. So Google Plus and Classroom. I'll just grab this one if I can, Chris. If that's okay. So the difference in many ways between Google Plus and Classroom is that I think we started building learning communities as soon as Google Plus came out. Just to answer Christy Dalzell's question, there is an age restriction around the use because it is a social media platform. It's normally 13 plus years to use it. Chris uses it with senior secondary, so it's not a problem. And it does do this definitely overlap. So coming to Alice's question, there is definitely overlap between what Google Plus communities do and what the much newer product Google Classroom can do in terms of there is a stream there. Google Classroom will also do handing in of assignments and some assessment for learning around assignments as well. We looked briefly at that last webinar. I reckon we'll have to pull up another webinar just about Google Classroom. That would be really awesome. There is definitely overlap. So in primary school, Google Classroom would definitely be the way to go. In a secondary context, there are both options are there. I really like Google Classroom, but I've still got my communities which I started 3 years ago, and kids have gone through those communities. The other side of Google Plus, and I'll just do a massive plug here for Google Educator Groups, is that the Google Plus communities can also be communities of learning at a professional level. So if you look for a Google Education Group community like the one in Melbourne, for example,
sorry, Chris, you might want to change back to your face. Apparently people are on my face again.
You've got that's nice. That's why I keep it on there. So yeah, sorry, back on my face. Yeah, so the Google Plus community, we can build professional learning communities in there again. Thanks, Michael, for reminding me to put the camera back on my face. It's just that I'm shy.
Can I chime in there, Chris?
Please, yeah.
So I was just going to mention that across Catholic education, or Victoria really, we've been really extensively using Google Plus communities as a professional learning community, so a community of professional practice. And we have communities that are set up all across Melbourne that actually involve every primary school principal and curriculum leader in every single one of our schools, basically, is part of one of those professional communities of practice. And they've been used, I know there was a question around this, they've been used very much to support some face-to-face network PD days that we run as a system, and it is very much almost like a flipped classroom model in that we try to provide stimulus and reading and ideas and generate discussion in between the days in those online spaces. So they've been really, really effective for that. The other thing that I think is really great about them is that they give people a voice, and this is what I found in my personal classroom experience, that often people may not, and this can be kids, like, you know, junior kids all the way through to adults, but people don't necessarily feel comfortable asking things or commenting on things face to face, and that can be quite great, having that space for that. And I also use them quite extensively in my classroom as a space for critique between my kids. So I actually got them to post up their own work in there, and we would have multiple classes in that space, and they would actually have to critique one another's work. So for me, it very much worked as a space that really empowered my kids to all be supporting one another rather than being so reliant on me as the teacher. And we use that in Catholic Education Melbourne now with our professional communities. It's very much about enabling everyone to become the expert and to share their expertise and their stories, because everyone's experiencing different things. So I just wanted to mention those things as well. Oh, just one final thing. I would say, and this is me putting on a little bit of a system hat, we would always really strongly recommend that in a Google Plus community that you have some sort of user agreement in your About Us section. Obviously, we're working in an online space, and this is next practice when we have this ability to have a 24/7 classroom effectively. So just a little bit of the dialogue around you know, the ways of working in that space that respect your classroom context or your professional context, so that people are aware of what they're entering into in those spaces, because they are publishing it online. It's not like some of the other things we've worked with in the past.
Awesome, thanks, Kimberley. So I'm just going to take a couple more questions, and we'll actually go back to Kimberley. Camilla asks about rolling resources to another class the following year. The resources wouldn't roll. The resources you'd keep in Drive, and then you would connect them to a new community that way. But on their own, you wouldn't necessarily copy a community and then use it the next year. It's about building a community, co-constructing it. So you can certainly recycle resources by keeping them in Drive. Then Sarah Anderson asks, has anyone used G+ communities in a flipped context? So that would be really interesting. You can connect with her if you have, because it's a great way of delivering materials and resources outside the classroom, which it absolutely is, I think, which Kimberley just alluded to. Sangeeta asked a question, what kind of settings do you follow, public or private? Again, very much down to the choice of the purpose. So Google Educator Group Melbourne is for educators across Melbourne, so it's a public community. But Chris's environmental science one is a private community only, available to the kids he gives it to. Equally,
sorry, with that, just be aware that when you set up your community, if you make it private, you can't then turn it to public afterwards. So there is definitely, before you start, put some thought into what the purpose, which we should always do in education, why are we doing what we're doing? So put some thought into it first, because you cannot actually alter it from private to public afterwards. But one of the great things for Google Apps for Education is you can restrict it to the domain level, so you can have it that it's open to anyone within your domain, so within your school or your school system, and only those people can actually find and contribute to it.
So, and the last thing on that is just around this idea that Google Classroom is, however, only available within your domain. So at the moment, you can only share across classrooms across your domain. Google Plus communities, if you want to open up and build a parent community or a community or a science school community, it's definitely worth looking at that. Okay, using Google Plus communities. One last thing before we go to Kimberley, who's next up, is we have Claire from a brand new school in South Island, New Zealand, that opened in February. Who are we best to connect with? How can we connect with schools? Well, interested schools, you've got a number of them already here in this Hangout, so definitely connect with them. Claire, I would also get on the Google Plus, look up the GEGNZ community. There are a lot of them there who would be delighted to connect with you. I'm absolutely sure of it. Okay, so I'm going to pass over to Kimberley now, and she's going to take us through organizing our lives.
Thanks, Chris. So I won't take my full allocated time, because I definitely cut into Chris Mann's time as well. But I did want to talk a little bit around the way that I have used Gmail and Calendar for organisation. So Chris put out for a bit of a vote around things that people are interested in, and the use of some of those basic tools can either make or break us in terms of efficiency in our workflow often. So I'm just going to share some of the things that you can do to make those things work for you, because they do work quite differently to probably some of the existing emails and calendar systems that we've had in place. And they do some really cool things that are worth knowing about. So I'll just share my screen. And I have way too many things open as well. So you can all see my Gmail now, and I use very often, since you can see that there are emails from 2014, but that's another account. But I just wanted to show you a few things that I've set up in my Gmail that actually enable me to be a lot more efficient. So the first one that you might notice that my Gmail might look a little bit different to yours, and that's because I've actually customized the view of my inbox. And so we can control most of the stuff for our Gmail settings under our settings cogwheel, exactly the same cogwheel as we see all across Google Apps products, and we go down to settings. Under here, we're going to select the tab Inbox. And you'll see here that you have the inbox type. Now, if you've never played with this before, you'll be on the default type. And there are a few different types that you can select. And some of them are supposed to be really, really intuitive. And actually, Google tries to predict things for you. And that's basically what the important first section is all about. But if you interact with another person frequently using Gmail, Google actually flags that email in its internal system and recognizes that that person might be important to you. And so if you choose the important first inbox type, you can actually have them put at the top. Unread first is a common thing that we've seen through anyone who's been using Outlook for years. Starred first, we're pretty familiar often with the concept of flagging emails, and you can put them first. And sorry, I should have mentioned that default is where we have those tabs across the top. If I just change mine to default, and Google, once again, in this is a bit of an intuitive one, and I haven't got my tabs up, will actually classify things as either newsletters or social and those sorts of things for us. But the one that I find the most efficient for me in terms of a professional inbox is actually the priority inbox. And this is because I can set up different sections within my inbox. So if I go here, I'll just reset to the default. So here, I can actually choose what inbox sections I have. So I can have at the top important and unread, and I can actually just change that to unread because I want to have my unread emails at the top. Then I want to have my starred emails next because I don't know about you guys, but I imagine that most people out there get so many emails nowadays that you cannot actually physically action them all immediately, so you have to star them in order to come back to them. And then I want a section here that's just everything else. And so once I've saved my changes, and this is something that takes a little while to get used to, you have to save your settings. I know we've got out of the habit of saving in all things that we do in Google Apps. You do have to save, but it'll actually change my inbox view. And so now if I read one of these emails here, let's read this one here, great. And then I go back, it will actually now move my list up here when my screen refreshes. If my screen refreshes down into my everything else section. And if I flag that, if I star it, then it will move into my starred section so I can action it later. And so you can customize your inbox in whatever way works best for you. One of the other things that people really need a lot nowadays is to be able to then organize the emails that come in. So, I would imagine that your average administrator or leader in a school is receiving, 50 to 100 emails a day, and your classroom teacher is receiving emails nonstop as well. And so you often get a little bit overwhelmed by having this huge list of emails. So in our existing mail programs, we used to talk about folders, but in Gmail we actually talk about labels, like a folder would have, but they actually get called labels. And there's a couple of different ways that we can create labels. I'll show you the most basic to start with. So if we go back to our settings tab, just so you get familiar with where all our settings are, and we go here to our labels, and you can actually see that the system has some labels that it will create for you, but you can create a new label and you can call it whatever you like. So I'm going to create a label called parent emails because I wanted to make sure that I actually put all of my emails in a particular spot that come from parents, and I click create. You'll see now that over here in my email list over here, I now have a section for parent emails. And so if I go back into my inbox, and we'll say that Kelly's email here is from a parent, I can select that, and I can move up here and I can select to label it as a parent email. And you'll see once I have labeled that as a parent email, did that not work? Parent emails, here we go. It actually puts a little label in the email. Now, the great thing about labels that make them different from folders is that you can have many different labels on the same email. So if Kelly was not only a parent, but she was also someone that spammed me with newsletters, I could also classify or apply the newsletter label to her email, and then I would find it both under my newsletter section over here and my parent email. So that can be a really, really effective thing. Everybody out there who's a little bit like me will also like the fact that when you go over to your labels, you can come over here and you can customize the color of them. So you can have a nice color coordinated labeling system. The other great thing that you can do with labels that I think is a really underutilized thing, if I email myself, I can actually go down when I'm composing a new email. In the bottom corner, I've got this more options section, and I can actually put a label on an email before I even send it. So that means that it'll automatically get classified into that particular label. So if I need to go back and find it again later, I can, which can be quite handy. So I won't send that email now. The other one that can be quite good is I receive a lot of newsletters, which is why I've got this newsletters thing. And newsletters can come in all shapes and forms, and some of them are really useful and some are not as useful. So I've actually set up a filter so that all my newsletters will go straight into this folder. And I can set it up so that they can either skip my inbox or they can go, or I can put them in there later. So if I select this email from the Gmail team, for example, and I go up here, and I'm going to filter messages like these. And what it's actually saying is that every time I get an email from mail.noreply@google.com, I want to do something with it. And so I'm going to say, so this is my from. I could do it with contains the words or doesn't have or subject as well, like that. If I go filter this search, I can choose to do things like skip the inbox, and people freak out when they see the word archive it. But if you archive things in Gmail, they are not deleted. They are actually under your all mail section, which I'll show you in a second. So I can skip the inbox. I can apply a label to it like newsletters, or I could choose to forward it, or I could delete it. All of those sorts of things, I'll put it into a category. It'll also give me the option of applying this filter to other matching conversations. And if I click create filter, it will now have moved that newsletters email into this Gmail email into my newsletters section. So that can be a really, really useful way of doing that. So for my newsletters, I also have a filter which contains the words unsubscribe. So I'll show you in my settings again where we access all of this. If I go to my filters, I have here, if I get an email that contains the word unsubscribe, which legally all of our newsletters and our advertisements should have that on there, then I want it to go to be archived and get it straight into this filter, so this label over here, so that it doesn't clog up my email for the more important things. A couple of other things aren't in here, and then I will move on. If you haven't checked out the Gmail Labs, this is the stuff that really makes Gmail amazingly different to some of our other email programs that we've used in the past. Go into your lab section under your settings, and I want you to enable canned responses. And I'd also like you to scroll down, and we want to enable undo send. So scroll down, there's lots of other ones you can do. Just like before, we have to save changes before it'll update. Move this page, come on.
5 minutes, Kimberley.
No worries. Okay. So what I've just done is enabled Gmail to do stuff which is unheard of in the past. So one of the things that we might get is a lot of annoying spam email, and this might be from people. In this case, it was from myself. It could be from organisations, or it could be that and this is completely stolen from my good friend Jim Sill, there could be that you get that one annoying parent that continually sends you emails, and you want to be able to respond to them as quickly as possible, but you don't always get the time during the school day. So what you can actually do is you can set up a canned response. So if I go in here and I wanted to reply to this email, when I click on reply, I have that same little menu option, the little downward arrow in the bottom right-hand corner, and I can choose from any pre-existing canned responses I've made, or I can make, so if I write in here, hello, please, please note I will return your email as possible. I clearly would write something probably a little bit better than this, but you know, you just get the idea. Kimberley. I can't spell my name. So what I can do is, this is an email that I'm actually going to need to send a lot. So it might be something to do with approving things for the school newsletter. It might be something about you want to acknowledge that you received students' work or something like that. And it's an email you're going to send constantly. If you type it out and then go to your canned responses, which we enabled through Labs, and then you click on New Canned Response, you can give this a name. So I'm going to call this a return email. And what it'll do is it actually will save this as a standard response that you can pull up at any point. So I'll click send on that and I'll just pull up another one, new email here. I go down to my more options, I click on or just move up to canned responses, and you'll see I now have return email. And oops, sorry, I clicked on the wrong one, ignore that. Canned responses, and I want to insert return email. And you'll see it fills in my email. So if you are sending a lot of emails, might be some sort of pro forma, some sort of information. If you're the person in your organisation that has to respond and give people further information, canned responses can be really awesome for that. So I'm going to send this to myself again. Oh, look, and there's my email popping up on the screen. Email. Now, sometimes we send emails and we forget that we're supposed to have done something, and so that can be really annoying. But you'll see when I press send, I actually have the option up here to undo my send. And so with Gmail in that lab, you can actually set it and you can change the timing up to 30 seconds that you can have. You can choose to actually cancel your sending that you were going to send. So pretty amazing stuff that we could never do in the past. The final thing just to show in Gmail is that you can actually use Gmail offline. So under your settings, you'll see that there's an offline section. All you need to do to use Gmail offline is actually install the Chrome app for offline Gmail, and you can do that by clicking on this link. It'll take you to the Chrome web store. And then when you go to your tab, so even if I had no internet connection, I would have my Gmail offline app here, and I could access that, and I can actually, I can send, as in they'll go into my outbox, and I can read and I can edit emails when I have no internet connection, which can be really, really useful. I'll just jump over very quickly to calendar and show you my two favorite things about calendar. One thing I'll point out as well is you can also do calendar offline, exactly the same as Gmail. So we're looking at our little settings cogwheel again. You can download the Chrome app and you'll be able to access this offline. Really great. My other favorite thing that I do in Gmail is I customize my view. So under my settings down here, I have a default view, but I like to have a custom view, and I'm someone who likes to see a couple of weeks at a time, so I pick 2 weeks. I save this again, and then you see my options up here. I now have the option of having a 2-week calendar, and so you can set that to lots of different things. If you're using calendar as your major calendar at your school, and you might have a whole lot of lesson activity in there, Agenda is a great view for that as well. So make sure you do check out the different views that are available. Final thing that you might not have used in calendar but makes your life so much easier is quick add. So say we have a GEG Melbourne event, cannot spell, at 7 p.m. at tomorrow at the Corner Hotel, Richmond. So all I have to do is type this and hit enter, and you'll see it's actually created a calendar event for me. It's got all the information I wanted. It's got my default time of 7 to 8 p.m. and it's put my location in there as well. And I think it's probably even found the right Corner Hotel. No, where's that loads? Perfect. So quick add can be used to just really quickly and easily chuck in information in there without having to go and actually edit all of your different calendar entries. I think I'll stop talking now.
That was awesome. Thank you, Kimberly. Just a couple of things very quickly. We've got Robin McAllister who says, great go-to information about Gmail. Kimberly, lots of things to share with our eSmarties team. That's great, Robin. That's what we're here for. Also, we've got Camilla who mentions, I don't see the primary social and promotions tabs. Is this set up the standard Gmail? Yes, that is the one of the inboxes, and if you go to settings, you can change that inbox view. I'm not a big fan of that one, to be honest, but yeah, you can change that easily just in your settings. Stella asks, how would you go? I think this is going back to the communities, but how would you go about recording student assessment and storing results? Would that roll over? Stella, that's a question that we are going to hold for a little while. I think when we come back, and we'll certainly be doing another webinar, I'm sure, about student assessment as well. So thank you very much, Kimberly. I shall see you tomorrow night at the GEG event. Be there if you're in GEG Melbourne. We're very excited. I'm going to pick up now and finish off tonight just looking at inquiry. You will have that debate at some time. But inquiry, in particular, how you can use some technology. So if I'm just going to switch to a screen share, and then I'm going to switch back over to our slides. So yeah, these slides are linked into the event, so please feel free to go on them. There are some clickable elements that you can play with. But just to put this in context, I suppose, one of the things that I would like to make a statement about around learning is I think learning is best when it's social. So it means when it's from others and also with others, and that essentially it's about making connections. And there's a beautiful graphic. I'm going to give this a go. There's a Spanish organization. I know we have some Spanish people in the Hangout tonight, so when I started this to you guys, the bestiario.org is a visualization company, I suppose, and they do a lot of things with taking information and making it kind of accessible and easy to see and easy to understand. One of the things I love are TED Talks, and they did an amazing thing just thinking about connecting learning together, which was they took a lot of TED Talk videos and they put them into a globe type thing like this. And what they did is they took the tags from all of the TED videos, and put them into a tag finder. Now, if I wanted to find a TED video about creativity, I could click on that creativity tag, and it gives me, Sir Ken Robinson, surprise, comes up as the first one. I can click on that, and it will take me to that video, which I can then click on and actually watch. But what I thought was fantastic about this, and it really made me think about how interconnected learning is and how it's very hard to plan learning in a linear way in many ways, is that if I wanted to find out about creativity and climate change, that was a bad choice, so I haven't got one. Let's go for climate change, and I wanted climate change and cities. I still haven't got a match yet. Climate change and environment, yeah, here we go. So I've got two people, these both tags exist on these videos, and they kind of start to look for things. So if I wanted climate change, environment, and design, yeah, I've got two. Well, I've certainly got two of them there. I can click on this, and I can find these videos. And I just thought it was a really awesome visualization, which I wanted to share with you guys, of how all this knowledge and content is available on the web and how connected it is, I suppose. So let's get on to so we're talking about learning being social, but let's go on to what we mean by inquiry. There is a really good lab post on the Notosh site, which is linked in here, where they talk about Googleable versus unGoogleable questions. Now, everybody defaults to going to Google, so you're watching a movie and you think, who's that actor, what else has he been in? And you'll Google and find out and find all this new information. But is that inquiry? Well, I'm going to throw out there that potentially inquiry may be more about those unGoogleable questions. So inquiry may be about setting tasks for learners where they have to inquire into, explore areas which you can't get through a single Google search. So I'm just going to put up a slide here which I think kind of explains that in some ways that inquiry does not have to be, some people are scared of inquiry, they think it's something that you're going to let kids loose on, or you might do it on the last week of term, or you might do it having a project now and then. Inquiry is an approach to learning. I don't think it's necessarily just a single way of doing things. And this is one of the images that we use someone at science school where I work, and we talk about the locus of control. So whether learning is driven by a teacher, so it might be what we call a phased learning cycle. So it's a really teacher-driven, teacher-decided outcomes, all the way through project-based learning, which might be learning which is kids have an element of choice in what they do and what they inquire into, but it's within a context. So it might be, for example, they're particularly doing an environmental science or inquiry, but they have to do that inquiry within a certain context of sustainability, for example. Or then finally, to kind of, I suppose, design thinking is at the other end of this spectrum, and design thinking is it is certainly an inquiry process, but finding of that question and finding of that context is entirely down to students. So there are lots of different ways lots of different structures that we can hang pedagogy onto, and lots of different structures that we can use to plan our learning. But all of them can have elements of inquiry in. So I've done another little graphic here, and I suppose inquiry for me, and all of these different things from design thinking through project-based learning, through problem-based learning, through challenge-based learning, all these different names essentially are about problem finding, immersion in that problem, synthesizing the things that you learn through immersion, and then action and communication. So either you do something about the problem or the question that you've inquired, or you communicate your findings about the question into which you've inquired, or indeed you do both of them. So I'm going to that's a really quick and quite a rough overview of what I think inquiry learning is about. But what I do want to do is spend a few minutes looking at the different layers of inquiry and some of the technology that we can use to do these things, I suppose. So problem finding, a really, really simple tool, which is probably one of my favorite Google Apps tools, is Google Forms. So, is there a problem worth solving? If you've got a question and you want to find out about, I don't know, for example, kids want to find out about how do they make their canteen more sustainable. That would be a really classic, how might we question from a design thinking inquiry? But is it a problem? Is it genuinely a problem worth solving? So what we can do is we can create a Google form. So just create more Google Forms. I can really quickly create some questions to find out from my community whether or not my question is a genuine one. So let's just go for something really simple. So I want anyone to be able to answer this question. I'm going to go for Enviro Cafe. Do you think rubbish left in the canteen is a problem? So I'm going to go for very simply a scale, and I'm going to say 1, nope, not a problem, and 5, serious problem. Okay, so I'm going to make that into a required question. Done that, I'm going to view the live form. It's not very pretty. We can always do another webinar on how to make it pretty. But I'm going to say, yep, it's a serious problem. So it's a kind of a 4, pretty serious problem. Let me just submit another result and say it's not a problem at all. Submit another result and say very serious problem. Submit that there. So then in my back in my form, you'll see that those 3 people, i.e. me 3 times, who filled in that form, have created 3 responses. So I can view responses, and they're held in a spreadsheet, which will, here we go, gives me a timestamp, and it says, do you think rubbish left in the canteen is a problem? Now what I can do is I could put that out to the whole school and get 500 responses. Now looking at that data can be quite daunting. There are some really nice tools in graphing and things in spreadsheets, in Google spreadsheets, but one of the things I want to show you really quickly is that you can add something called conditional formatting, which I've shown this loads of times before, but it's one of the most exciting things in the world. So I'll show it again. Conditional formatting is under Format Conditional Formatting. I want to say that if the cell is greater than 4, let's say, so if people are putting 4 or 5 as a value, which is, remember is a serious problem, I want it to be, that red for me is not serious enough, so I'm actually going to go for a much more serious red. I want that. In fact, actually, what I want greater than or equal to 4 is what I actually want. However, I'm going to add another rule, and I'm going to say if it is less than 4, I'm going to say green. And you can play with these rules to get exactly the ones you want. You can have equal to 1, is green and equal to 5 is red, and all the way in between. And suddenly I've got a nice color-coded kind of approach to my data. If they're all reds, then I know I do have a problem and I should really inquire into it. If they're all greens, then maybe I don't have a problem. I need to rethink that problem and come up with a better one to solve. So the next part is immersion. So there's 3 really quick tools that I'm going to show you. Obviously, by the way, Google Forms is not the only thing you do in problem finding. This is one of those things that you can do. Immersion, I'm going to show you 3 really quick tools. I'm a bit of a word nerd, which I know Kimberley is as well. An Ngram viewer is an awesome kind of approach to looking at words online. Now, in Google Books, all of the books that they've scanned, which are lots and lots of them, you can look for individual words. So the words Albert Einstein, Sherlock Holmes, and Frankenstein, I can actually see how much relatively they appeared at different times. So the word, that's Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes did not arrive until 1885. Now, I reckon if I did a Google search for when Sir Arthur Conan Doyle first started writing the Sherlock Holmes novels, it would be about then. Frankenstein must have been a little bit earlier, which is interesting. But Einstein isn't really mentioned in books until about 1916. So just looking for any word. So if I look for apple, for example, oops, if I could spell it, it would be even better. You'll see that apple is definitely mentioned quite a bit. And you know, it suddenly disappears down here, and that's really interesting. But then if I put apple and have a look at that, we can certainly see that when this is an apple, as in a juicy fruit, but this one I reckon is much more about the company Apple with a capital A. You can case desensitize. But if you wanted to look for a word, you know, you're starting with sustainability as your problem that you're searching into. Well, let's have a look how often sustainability is mentioned in books. And it's not really coming in until the end of the 70s. So isn't that a really interesting thing for kids to think about? Well, nobody thought about sustainability. Well, certainly nobody wrote about sustainability until really the end of the 70s. So Ngram View is just a really nice way to look at words and to see, like, just to have a curious, inquiring mindset around them, and really start to help kids immerse themselves in the problem they're looking for. The next tool I'm going to show you is an awesome one, is Google News. Again, these are all linked in. Google News newspapers has a lot of newspapers. Some of them are in different languages. What we are going to do is we're going to look at the Australian Age. So you'll see that the Google has scanned in over 32,000 copies of the Age from the 1850s all the way through. I think it ends in the 90s. Oops. Oh, I've gone too far. 2000. I've gone into the future, so nothing is there yet. Let's have a look. Come back.
Chris, we've got just a couple of minutes to go.
Thanks. Oh yeah, time is running away. We can actually look up the age. So if I wanted to go to 1978, which is the year I was born, and I want to go to May 1978, and then I want to scroll a wee bit further along and find 31st of May. It's a bit late for presents, anybody, but please, you know, I'm happy to accept them afterwards. I can actually click on that scanned in newspaper for that day. So I've got 60 pages worth of text. And on 31st of May 1978, one of the headlines on the front page was "Teenage Smoking Soars." What a fascinating place to start and talk about teenage smoking or whatever it might be. Again, there's a Google News search in there as well. Finally, a classic one is the Google Doc Research tool, which again we've looked at before in this webinar, but it's definitely worth you know, sometimes on those hidden tools. If I go to my tools up here and I click on Research, and I want to I've got 4 potential questions here. How might we better design the layout of our classrooms to facilitate great learning, which would be a classic design thinking question. What would you do if you had to choose whether a loved one on life support should be allowed to die? So by making that a choice question for kids, it's much less about, you know, what are the pros and cons of euthanasia. It's much more forcing kids to think about these unfortunately horrible things. How might you describe mathematics as beautiful, and how might nanoscience save the world? So a collaborative doc. I've opened the research bar. I'm going to type in beautiful mathematics. Let's see if that gives me anything. Maybe not. Maybe I won't get anything. Oh, I have mathematical beauty, the 11 most beautiful mathematics things, why the brain sees beautiful fractals. So I'm going to grab that fractal and I'm going to drop it in here. And the beauty about using the research toolbar is that rather than me dragging and dropping in lots of things from the internet, I'm going to do that by I'm going to make sure they are referenced. So it automatically puts a footnote reference in there. I'm also going to do something about mathematical beauty from this looks interesting. I'll insert a link to that there. and again, it is footnoted. Oh, sorry, no, it's not. That's a link. If I want to cite that page, I can again go over here, hover and cite, and it will put a little footnote in and do the correct citation at the bottom of my page. So the research document for immersion is wonderful. Finally, I'm going to go on to how do I make links? How do I synthesize all this information that I've got together? Well, I can do that with something called Padlet. Padlet is not a Google tool, but you can certainly log in using your Google identity, which often makes things much easier online for kids. This is a really simple thing where I can create basically post-it notes, I suppose. I can put web links into those post-it notes. I'm going to be a bit meta and put this web link in here. And once I've collected things in this project nest, I can start to organize them and look for links. There are a few different tools like ThingLink. Oops. There are a few different tools like ThingLink which allow you to put links onto pages. But this is just basically post-it notes online, allowing me to synthesize the things I've learned. And the very last thing I was going to show you around inquiry is, well, how do you actually communicate that out there? YouTube is a wonderful thing. Sometimes you don't want kids to make videos with their faces. You want them to actually show the things that are on their screen. I can go to Screencastify, which is linked in here, and is a Chrome extension. You can see the extension on the top of my screen here. Click on that, and I can record a screencast. So if I start recording, it will record what is going on my screen, and it will indeed put that into Google Drive or straight up into YouTube. I just click on stop here. It's going to get a bit weird because you're going to hear me talking back in a second. And it will indeed put that into Google Drive or straight up. So you can see that immediately you create a screencast video with or without the video in the bottom right hand corner of the person, but it allows kids to create those presentations really quickly. You can keep it in Drive, so it doesn't need to be public, but I really encourage, when you can, when you think it's a good thing, to make that authentic audience using things like YouTube channels and communities. Use that authentic audience. I'm going to stop screen sharing. That was quick. Sorry about that. Okay, so that is me done on inquiry. Are there any questions? I don't think there are.
There's a couple of questions around some things. Hayden asked that question about how do you do it when you were talking about one of the early stages of inquiry, but Hayden, we need probably a little bit more info about what it is that Chris was doing that you'd like more info on, but you could potentially put something into the event page and we can respond to it in there. Just quickly on Jeff's question around having two separate domains, one for staff and one for students, and the complications that might have for Google Plus communities. That depends on whether you're talking about you have two completely separate Google Apps instances or you have two subdomains within the one instance for staff and students, which for a lot of people is gobbledygook. So Jeff, we can probably point you to, and maybe I'll try and find and put a link in the event page to some further info around that. Camilla's just asked about length of time in Screencastify as well.
Good question, Camilla. I think that there is, I can't remember what it is, but I know that I've definitely done videos up to like 15, 16 minutes without having the limit on them. But what I would suggest is, as much as I love the sound of my own voice, is to keep those Screencastifies short. You know, if you're going to be making videos, especially for public consumption, like 2 or 3 minutes, I would suggest is a good length of video. I think there is a limit, but as I say, I've certainly done 15. Over 15 minutes in terms of using that. So there we go. So thanks for answering that question, Jeff. Please do connect with one of us and ask the question about those domains. Stella, we're going to pick up your question maybe in a different webinar. And Christy, the slides are available on the event page in the comments. I'll put them in again now, and I'll send them out via email. If you have not registered, please look at the events page. There is a link to a Google form, which I'll put out again. Please register so we can keep in contact. We'll send you a certificate for your registration, saying that you've registered to attend this event or that you have watched it afterwards on YouTube, which you certainly, I'm sure you all will. It just really remains for me to say once again a massive thank you to Kimberley Hall from the Catholic Education Office in Melbourne and the GEG Melbourne Queen, I'm going to say. I'm very much looking forward to us spending some time together at the GEG event in Richmond at the Corner Store tomorrow night. Please come along to that if you can, that would be awesome. And also my friend and colleague Chris Mann from John Mann Science School, who is staying at school until this time to participate in this webinar and share some wonderful ideas with us. So thank you very much. Please keep in touch on the event page. I will be sending you out some links. Make sure you join your Google Educator Group local Google Plus community. It's a great place to connect with people and to share ideas. Good night, and be kind to each other, to yourself and each other. I think that's what Jerry Springer used to say. Good night, everybody. Take care.